again in his handheld phone since dropped to the ground, only later to recall how odd it was for the motionless to be infused with motion and for such the rarity in how motion could itself be defied all at once. Chapter 66. With the hell of a lot that had just occurred with which only one man named Noah could with empirical knowledge if on scene could talk about who needs to cover what had occurred worldwide. A world engulfed in darkness because of the smock of icy hail that luridly passed like the phantom through air that haze, it was heard about and the premonition had forefronted its trepidatious expectation besides, would soon on the wings of this rapture event Palestine end what was soon expected would in comparison pale. They knew something. West of Israel and some 6,600 miles away, 12 hours trip by plane, the portion of the planet weighed down like the rest of the world by health crisis, plague, government upheaval and insurrections. Mark mandate wars and martial law, it was lightened some by the good results of the explosives team's handiwork who'd actuated and confirmed the information regarding mountain installations before detonating the explosives. Still the ships off of the Florida coast were as veritable cruise liners facilitating the thousands of lives who'd placed bets on preserving their lives by fast fleeing to safer, so-called, waters. The went, wrath, defections considerable and with the assembly station bombings regularly occurring it was clear, because of the detail and successes of Joel and fellow Mossad alongside certain US government officials and Eagles frontiersmen, those installations stabbed into remote mountain ranges in suburban zones inside of the United States that you could scarcely find even by accident. They were with some exception liquidated of the detained who were then ordered to trains for long rides to where the plan was to shuttle them off to ferries and then US Navy ships. Leave it to Joel Weber to constitute an exceptions category. Again the perfection, at least thrice, of bitter irony. Comes down to this. Began Dalton Benson with his facial crevice sweaty like his hands and by a night sky set aglow by overhead and oversea increasing rocket fire. Smudging shadow and grimed condensation from alongside them and illuminating his eyes all the more, his hands a mirror image of his timbre of voice in so much that the frail and failing cadence of both were shaken in a quivering audibleized pulse. It all comes down to this. A tsunami with the rebuilding of shoreline cities or the incinerating entire of the North American continent. That is what we must sacrifice over that which the Iranians and Nasserine jihadists choose. How terrible to say it, Mr. Prime Minister. As former, and some men and women demanding present, Chief Executive Officer, it's maybe like, 'twas with God who, with only 8 souls left to spare, decided to let her sink with so many irredeemable blemishes rusting out the hull of his ship that was civilization. Only as the mere mortal to every Islamic foothold and reworked head on Wentworth's version of America, I swear, that there are 1,000 who feel that they would give all just as the many have given their blood and spirit to fight for old America's sovereignty idea. To have his return instead of this disassembled upstart attempt in these invaders who tear each other apart. Many there are who befriended Nervanic globalism and the abnegation of the national sovereignty idea, and, say what we will about people electing their own fates at the voting booths, these now say we, that is them, didn't know what they were asking for and have thus received the motherlode of the all that they do scarcely want. Sir, on your order. You are acting officer in charge respectfully, sir, and are the only one fit to live with the consequence of engagement in this scenario, if called to subordinates. Even if means answering to yourself instead of some commission. You are America in this ship, sir. Yes, I know. Only the task is handed over to you, fellow US Eagles frontiersmen. Got him in your guns, do you? Give me the tsunami sandwich, will ya? We'll lose a few souls on the coastal plains yet we'll spare the inestimably many more inland. Still our American family. Man the torpedoes and light that son of a bitch up in glorious fire. I flew over top of the land carnage of his on DC yet thanks to Israeli Mossad and other intelligence every one of the men and women made it underground, happy to say. He's on 40 minutes and counting before Abu gives him his shoot down order. Okay, sir. We're clear to empty then. Affirmative, and sooner rather than later. Guarantee the impact and unleash on her and that's before one of the Russians or Turks lurking about out there like sharks unloads on this destroyer. The shot's called. You activate it by executing. Dalton Benson reminded, staring only toward the appointed captain with a blank expression overtaking his face. He mouthed in a shushed murmur, second African-American commander-in-chief. These men with upline who signed the Articles of Freedom in Wentworth's detested U.S. Constitution. My upline from mothers and fathers who were hogtied and brought to America in shackles as slaves, given unto hard taskmasters. The blood of aborted lives still soaking her yet, knowing bondage and chains here we learned liberty still. And participated in Enterprise America. In fact what promoted me to the highest office of this land as America's, one of the world's most powerful men was the belief that our children should know liberty instead of chains, American liberty and nothing but. My regrets, you ask? I've shared this. The Iranians set all that up, planting that captain inside of the US sub where he was groomed into service for one express purpose. That ship that he was said to have isolated and shot down after, how ironic again, after drifting into our waters, he called his own order against it that day in a deed for which he was honored when we know that 'twas a retired vessel of theirs that he only was said to have decommissioned. If only we knew about the ruse then and that really, sorta say, that sub he's in now was situated as the idling thread inside of her hull. Here I am to give the order but it shouldn't have come down to this. The regret part that 'twas I who decorated the man with the merit medal. Benson's agony of emotional rest etched into his face, his eyes swollen and watery, sore red with tears of anguish, the muscles of eye and mouth in convulsive twitch that effectually changed his very warm timbre of voice into some estrogen-rich unidentifiable cry uncharacteristic of him. Hung the medallion over his shoulder. The colors of Old Glory, the colors of the ribbon, and the colors of the emblem on the rear dorsal tail of that submarine one. I can only live with this by living with the sight that is seeing him now light up the sky, sink their corpses down to the fish. His staff of 60, pulseless Americans long ago, which is how he commandeered the vessel without clarification or resistance. Gentlemen, what's taking so long? Destroy that submarine yesterday. The men slammed up against the walls before they crashed like dolls to the floor, all save one including Benson making it as quickly to their feet, only like groping drunkards who in their chaotic minds scampered off in every which direction. To your position and officer, I still order you to. Benson's brown palm, he saw after dabbing mindlessly with a probing and then cupping hand there, it was now a sickening shade of wet red crimson and a color that from that forehead gash served as framery for every man and object toward where he stared in disorienting panic and blur. I still want you to. Your order, sir. The order is to unleash on the lieutenants and before you turn to training your guns elsewhere, including on who's blasting us. Did you hear me? Benson caught his fall by giving his weight to a counter after another impact shocked and then rocketed the men and ship, rocketing them like balls between paddles on elastic strings. The man given to the task, only his mouth moves. So thought Benson. What's he saying to me? Anyone hear him? Over the sound of gushing fissures and pipe fountains, wheezing and spewing in irreparable ruptures, competing as successive explosions. I think he said he'd unloaded before impact. I think so, sir. Too loud, sir. This man shouted. A new order, sir. Where, as we in response attack, we have to lower the boats, a severe hit at the hull and at the stern, sir. We're already angling toward a fast surface leveling, sir. We're losing her, I think. We're gonna have to. And the orifice filling with oil, fire and water and things besides was quickly vacated of things and bodies that could be vacated. Remember, we watched on as that humongous angel, not one empowered by a commission to wreak havoc on vessels that had taken it. NASA and Wentworth skippered Winston Bates' mark of perdition creation, but 'twas some other angel with a mind to intervene. Like a toy that missile was. Unloaded off the west coast of America to wreak incinerating devastation on the same. It made when 'twas battered after the angel in a fantastic blitz torpedoed at the warhead and missile. And yes, 'twas Dalton Benson, order that isolated the damage on the continent to what had already impacted. DC and portion of New York destroyed and the countless souls surviving these assaults they would live on the promise to, eye for an eye here, exact vengeance against the terrorism hub and immobilizing state that was Tehran, Iran. In a very real sense as a kind of messianic reenactment where it's to death to claim a victory on a third day. The retribution for the intent that was annihilation attempt of America ND of civilization and freedom itself would it was hoped. In some other portion of the world result in annihilation of terrorism and death itself on despotic soils and tyrannical souls whose upline and ancestry knew of God's service once and a desire to empower Israel away from her exile and estrangement. As Benson did say, nothing short of irony through and through. We've seen it. The subterranean nuke bomb tests conducted on various bodies of water, terrific monstrous explosions as lurching beasts climbing and climbing and climbing unto a real menace and towering climatic water deluged apex before layers of explosion at a snail's pace finally rescind or peel back. This was not detonation in a single bomb drop but the explosion of the container of such in this nuclear submarine and egregious mutiny by the definition of the word. No one definitively knew what the visual projection should look like and, compared with the prospect of a grisly alternative in what film reels have shown us before, it scarcely mattered. Water everywhere with whole portions of New York and other cities wearing cresting waves of tidal skirting as dress, from outland and in appearing as such. Almost as quickly breaking against tippy tops of sky-rise buildings before drawing back from the Potomac into the sea. Damages wreaked yet, 'twas more so of water instead of fire. Would the inhabitants abandoning to globalism and the creeping Islamic extremism brand of radicalism sworn to her destruction know the difference or be thankful at all? Able to realize what they were saved from?